Hi and welcome to the Courageous Collective, the podcast where we celebrate diverse women who dare to do things differently. I'm Rupa Baradva, a copywriter and communication specialist. I work with women entrepreneurs to help them get clear on their brand messaging, and I help them become more visible to their target customers using PR.
And I'm Fardeep Edwards, founder of The Branding Fox, a design consultancy that supports women in business with their branding and design needs. After working in corporate roles, we both took the leap into self-employment and created our own businesses where our skills and experience could really shine. But something we both noticed was the lack of women that looked like us at events, on speaker panels and in the media.
Which is why we created the Courageous Collective podcast. This is our platform to celebrate and champion diverse women who are smashing it in their businesses. In each episode, we speak to a female founder about the story behind their business. We explore their inspirations, the challenges they faced and how they've dealt with them. And we talk about what they're yet to achieve.
Welcome to the Courageous Collective and enjoy today's episode. So hi and welcome to the Courageous Collective. We're back with a new episode and it's great to have you join us here. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that is so important for small business owners, and that is marketing. So let's get started. Rupa, what's your definition of what marketing is?
So to me, marketing is about the activities that you do to share, promote, build awareness around your brand. So that could be anything from social media to sending out an email to your clients. I think the one thing I've learned being a business owner is that if you don't tell people about what you do, no one will know. And I know we're going to come onto the myths a bit later in this episode, but I think sometimes you assume that people will know, but it's highly unlikely that they will. So even just talking to people, that's a form of marketing. It's about getting your business out there, getting your brand out there, and also yourself. We've talked about personal brand quite a bit in this series, and I think even just you being out there talking to people is a great way of building that awareness. And I think that's to me what marketing is. What would you add?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is telling people what you do, and it's doing that again and again. It's how marketing is an activity in terms of how you are looking at raising your brand awareness and letting people know what it is, who you are and what you do. But I think it's also about how you help your clients and customers, and also about how you attract people to your business. But I think, it gets kind of gets a bit muddled, and I know we're going to talk about that a bit. But one of the things that we're talking about is what marketing is, but would like to kind of talk about whether it's the same as sales, because I think they get bundled together, don't they, quite a lot. So I don't know, what's your take on that, Rupa?
Yeah, I think they do, and I think sometimes you hear a lot of conflicting advice as well, which is all about selling, and actually I do think there's a distinction. I think there is a difference between marketing and selling. I think marketing probably comes before the sales part of the process. So I think marketing is about building that awareness. It's about finding those interested potential clients or customers. And then I think sales is that next stage of that process where you take those interested people, actually seal the deal and make them customers. So I think you can't have one without the other. But I always think, for me, marketing comes first and then you have sales. And that's kind of that second part, really. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any of these activities happen in silo, and they all kind of get a bit intertwined. I think, the process for me is like, is branding, marketing, sales, but then sometimes we jump back a bit as well. And it reminds me of this analogy they had, I've read somewhere, where you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink it. And I think the drinking bit is the sales. So the marketing is leading that horse to the water and telling them about it, so that they know what to do, know where to go. But then, the sales bit is then making them drink that water. So definitely, I think marketing is about bringing that awareness for your brand and your business and getting people interested, so that it has the potential to lead to sales, to generate those leads, and also to build some of those relationships.
That's a really good analogy, actually. It's a good way of like thinking about how that whole process works. And I think sometimes people do forget about the sales part of it, and you get wrapped up in the marketing part, and then you realize, oh, actually, I haven't got that many customers now, and I need to kind of, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more in this episode, but it is definitely distinctive stages. So let's bust some myths about marketing, because we know there are lots. And, what do you think people assume about marketing? What's the reality? What's the truth?
So I think there's a bit of a myth that you have to big yourself up, especially in comparison to your competitors or bigger businesses or those that have been around longer than you have. So I think sometimes people feel like they have to exaggerate what they can do for people in terms of results. And the reason I say that is because in the online space, there is quite a lot of, I've done this X for that many X customers. And I'm not saying that that isn't true, but then I think that makes it feel like you have to also have these big claims and these big results. So I think there's a bit of a myth there about having to big yourself up. But I think, there is an element also of elevating your presence. So there's a bit of a fine line, I think, when it comes to that. I think one of the other myths is that you have to be everywhere, especially when it comes to social media channels. But, the marketing, in terms of touch points as well, when people are going to come across your brand, it could be various different points. It could be your email, it could be in-person networking, it could be at a speaking event, it could be online. There's so many different points of contact potentially that you could come into contact with somebody who might be interested in your business. And I think there's a bit of a myth that you have to be everywhere, but that's not sustainable depending on the size of your business. Big businesses can do it. Of course they can, because they've got the resources and the teams and the people. So I think it's more strategic and a better use of time to not actually be everywhere and be more targeted in terms of what's relevant for your particular brand and business, and in terms of the people that you're trying to attract. One of the other myths I wanted to talk about was that great products and services sell themselves. And yes, it's good to have a great product and service. And if you do a good job for clients, they're likely to refer you to other people. And that is a form of marketing, but that's one form of marketing. So there's an element of where it can sell themselves, but I still believe you have to market your products and services regardless of how great it is. So I think there's a whole ecosystem that needs to be looked at in terms of the whole marketing for your business. There's marketing and selling, what we just spoke about. It's, they're two separate things. And also marketing is branding. This gets bundled together quite a bit, I find, especially in job specs. Actually, I notice when people are asking for a brand manager, and when I look at the details of what's required, it's actually a marketing role and not branding. So I think part of that is, probably a little bit of misunderstanding of what branding is. And branding kind of gets put under the marketing department. So there's a bit of a myth of that. Those are both the same things. And and a couple of other things I was just going to talk about was that more followers on social potentially leads to more sales. I think that's a bit of a myth with marketing. And nobody sees 100% of your content. So I know as small business owners, we're quite wrapped up in our own worlds and our own, sort of echo chambers of what we're doing and who we're interacting with and talking to. And we see 100% of everything that goes out. And sometimes we have to just remember that not everybody else, nobody else will ever see 100% of our content, and just think to, that applying that to other people's content, how much of that you will see. so much is governed by algorithms and when you're online and when you come in contact with people, what, you know, who you might be speaking to when you're out and about. So it is okay to repeat yourself, not say exactly the same message, but I think that's part of marketing's role, is to tell people what you do again and again and again. So yeah, there's quite a few things there, Rupert. I don't know what you want to add to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say my list is quite similar. And actually, the last point that you made about, you know, repeating yourself, I think sometimes we get such a mind block about saying the same thing over and over again. And that, oh, if I've said it already, then, you know, people will know. And it's this assumption that people will know. Well, you know, when have you gone on social media and seen something and gone, oh, I already know this, or I've already seen this, or it's such a noisy world that we're in. I think that it's highly unlikely that you can remember other people's content unless it's actually really memorable. There's this stat that says, it's probably changed now, but it's something like you have to tell somebody something 7 times in order for them to take it in and take action. So if that's the case, actually, you know, this leads me to my next point, that it's okay to use content that you've already put out there, you know. And I think sometimes as business owners, we get stuck in this mindset that we have to create everything new and everything has to be exciting and new. And, you know, I have to create a reel that's brand new from scratch. And actually, what you can do is repurpose stuff that you've already put out there. So, for example, you may be sending out an email to your subscribers. Well, can you reuse that content, and can you, you know, make a reel out of it, and can you maybe write a LinkedIn post out of it? So that's that one bit of content that you've used 2 or 3 times, but then go back and, you know, revisit that content. I think we sometimes are quite hard on ourselves, you know, we're time poor as it is. And it's difficult to sometimes come up with these amazingly great new ideas. Well, you know, cut yourself some slack and maybe look back at your previous content, and see what you can, you know, revisit, reshape. Maybe you need to create a new graphic, or there's some other way of kind of putting it out there. But I think your audience will never kind of pull you up on the fact that you've, you know, revisited or reused a piece of content. I don't think, you know, I've never heard that happening. So my advice would be to definitely repurpose stuff. I think money comes into it quite a fair bit. So there, you know, there's this assumption that marketing has to be expensive. It has to cost the earth. You have to have a big budget to do marketing. I don't agree. I think you can do marketing on, you know, a relatively lean budget. I think the trap is, and this is what happens to a lot of people, myself included, is that you end up subscribing for things that you don't necessarily need. And it's so easy to do this. I'm sure we've all got subscriptions that we, you know, it is worth looking at, because, you know, you may sign up for a free trial for an email client, and then actually you realize it's no good. You don't need it. You're still paying for it. So just be aware of like what you're spending money on, and actually, is there a cheaper, better way to do it? And to give you an example, like I pay for Adobe Sign, which is where I, you know, use that to send my clients contracts to get their sign signatures. And as part of that, I also get like free Adobe Photoshop, and I get lots of other things. So I'm like, well, why am I paying for Canva? You know, it's just looking at things and kind of like looking at the bigger picture, and actually what is it that you need. And there's probably multiple things that you're paying for that you probably, you know, are duplicating. So yeah, something to definitely be aware of. I think another myth that I would like to bust is that it's really easy to build an engaged audience overnight. And I actually don't believe that's true at all. I think we are fed so many things on social media that, you know, I built this, you know, 6,000 people community overnight. That's not true. I don't think that is, you know, I think it takes time. I think it takes commitment. And I think it takes work, because these things are not going to happen overnight. I think your community that you're trying to build, at the end of the day, they're all people, and they want to, you know, understand why they should buy from you. You know, why should they follow you? I don't think it's a given. And I genuinely don't think it's that easy. Maybe it might have been a few years ago, but I think it's so much more harder now. You mentioned about, you know, having to be everywhere as well. Again, I don't think it's possible. I think, you know, we've spoken to quite a few people who are like, yes, I'm on this channel, I'm that channel. And it's like, how do you do all these things and do your work and bringing business? And, you know, so I would definitely consider the channels that you're on and, you know, see if they work for you. Are they bringing in work? That's the first thing. And I did this a while ago for myself, where I did like a very, you know, simple bit of analysis. I looked at, where are my clients coming from? The majority of my clients, like 99.9% of my clients, are word of mouth and referrals. So just looking at that in itself, why am I spending half of my life literally creating reels and worrying about the Instagram algorithm, which frankly is, you know, a headache in itself, when I'm not actually, you know, getting work in? Now, that's not to disregard Instagram or LinkedIn or, you know, these channels that maybe are not bringing work in. They're great for building awareness. So I think, you know, we have to balance some of these things that we hear and actually take everything with a pinch of salt, look at the data and see what it's telling us before we kind of make knee-jerk decisions. And the final thing is, the final myth is around the fact that your target audience will find you. Like, they'll just find you, you know, regardless of wherever you are or whatever you do, your people will find you. I don't agree. I think you still have to go out, build that awareness, whether it's speaking on podcasts or, you know, networking or physical events versus what you're doing online as well. Like, people won't know you're there until you tell them. So I think you have to put the work in and find who your audiences are as well. So yeah, quite a long list of myths there.
No, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because once you start talking about them, you go, okay, there is actually quite a lot. And there's probably more, I think, as well, that we could talk about. And I think there is a little bit of an over-reliance on social media sometimes. And, you know, and social media is great, but we do have to remember that we don't own anything that's on there. Therefore, you do need to think about the overall marketing for your whole brand and your business, and that's just one channel. There's lots of, isn't there?
There is a lot, yeah.
So we've talked about quite a lot of myths there. What do we think are the main challenges then for women of colour, listeners of our podcast, creative business founders, when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, I think there's a broad number of challenges that I think we all face as business founders. And I think then when you look at that, you know, maybe a lens further on women of colour, I think some of the things may slightly get magnified, you know, depends on obviously how you're looking at things. But I think consistency is definitely like a big issue. And I think a lot of the people that we've spoken to on this podcast talk about consistency or the lack of consistency. And it's only when they maybe fix that one thing that then helps them build those consistent habits. And it helps them do the thing that they want to do. So I think consistency is definitely important when it comes to marketing. I know, talking from like my own experience, I really struggle sometimes with marketing because I find it's definitely a long game that you're doing. It's not something that's going to, again, give you results overnight, but I think it's when you get into that rhythm and that pattern of consistently marketing yourself, that's when you see the results. And it's a bit like this podcast, you know, we started off small and we, you know, started from like doing monthly episodes. Now we're doing them fortnightly. And it felt a little bit uncomfortable because it was like, oh, this is different. This is, you know, can we do this? And we did it. And then we did it again for this series. And so I think it's that feeling of uncomfortableness, which, you know, does show up so much when you're marketing yourself. Which leads me to my next point, actually, around confidence or lack of confidence, and also imposter syndrome, which again we've spoken about a lot about in this podcast. But I feel as women of color, sometimes we do bring that extra, we do have that extra baggage in terms of confidence, lack of confidence, not necessarily feeling like it's okay to show up, that we'll be judged more so because we're doing these things that are maybe outside of our normal kind of, conventions that we should be kind of, living within. So I think that then means that it's almost like an inner battle that you're facing in order to then go and market yourself or speak at an event or even put yourself forward for an event. So sometimes I think confidence is one that it's so easy to kind of belittle it and say, oh, it's not really an issue, and we all struggle with it. But actually I think when you tackle confidence head on, it can make such a big difference to how you market yourself and put yourself out there. And again, that brings me to my next point, which is just getting in your own way. Sometimes we tell ourselves these things that, I shouldn't really be putting myself out there. People will think certain things about me, or, I don't know, it's scary, isn't it? Putting yourself out there, and marketing is all about putting yourself out there. It's putting a spotlight on yourself, on your business. You want that awareness, but it feels very uncomfortable and a bit scary. So sometimes we get in our own way of thinking you don't deserve this, or you shouldn't be doing this. You're not the right person to be doing this. But you're the person who's running this business, and if you're not doing it, who else is going to do it? So I think, there's a few things there, which I would say are kind of the main challenges. What would you say?
Yeah, some interesting points there, isn't there? I think as a woman of colour, so trying to think about that specifically, and I've really got my own experience to kind of lean on for this, because without sort of speaking to other women of colour and what they feel, I think there is a little bit of being able to speak out. And I know we've spoken about this in another episode before, but growing up, as from a an Asian background, girls weren't really supposed to speak up. They were, kind of a little bit ingrained that you do what you're told to do. And I think to be able to market yourself, you've got to be able to have a voice and give yourself a voice. So there is confidence in that as well. But I think it comes from a bit of a learned experience as well of being able to speak up. And I think that can, that has the potential to hold you back. So there is a bit of a learning curve to it as well, as a woman of colour. I think not just, there is the point from marketing and putting yourself out there and getting over that hurdle of, I've got to talk about myself. What am I going to say? People are going to judge me. Oh my God, it feels really weird, because it does, doesn't it, initially? And I suppose we're talking from the point of view of putting ourselves out there in an online space, even maybe for networking as well. I'm more on the introverted side, so I'm not one of those people who are going to be, really great at all the networking and be right at the front or anything. I have moments, but not, I'm not an extrovert, that is for sure. So that sort of stuff does take a little bit of confidence to build up and just kind of do it and put yourself out there and just go with it anyway. And I think definitely as I've got older, I've just cared less anyway. So that's probably helped. So I think there's a few things, isn't there? I suppose as a woman of colour is, one, as being a woman, depending what your upbringing's been like and what your environment is like as well, in terms of being able to speak up and put yourself out there, and what sort of support network you've got around you to help that. Because if you feel like you're on your own or you haven't quite got that support, it does feel harder because you've only got yourself. So I think that's possibly sometimes something that can hold us back as well. And it's, I think we've probably got the potential to get in our own way a little bit, because you are, kind of worrying about what other people might think. It may then, hold you back in putting yourself out there. So I think there's a few different things. They're probably quite intertwined as well. The other thing I would say is sometimes not knowing where to start. So it is a skill. I think it's a skill to be able to market yourself and your business without feeling weird about it, and without feeling like you're about to be judged, or you feel like you have to know what to say all the time. And I think some of that is that we probably overcomplicate things a little bit. Whether that's a female trait or not, I don't know, but I know that's certainly what I've done in the past sometimes. There's lots of advice out there in terms of you've got to market like this, you've got to market this type of content and this many times a week. And I just think there aren't any hard and fast rules. Everything changes, especially in the online world. The algorithms and the way people see your content and the way businesses evolve, it's changing all the time. So I don't think there's any set rules in what you're supposed to do and how as well. I think it's more about finding what works for you and what is comfortable for you as well. But I do believe you need to be a little bit courageous. So do what works for you and what you enjoy doing, but also be that little bit braver.
Yeah. And I think we're going to come back to that in a minute, aren't we, about being braver. So we've talked about the myths and we've talked about the challenges. Let's talk about how we overcome some of these challenges, because I think it's really important. They are challenges, but look, you can overcome them. And I think if we begin with consistency, because look, it's one we all probably struggle with. What do you suggest we do to become more consistent with our marketing?
So one of the things I would say is to just take imperfect action. So, I think you don't have to have everything perfectly written or perfectly laid out. Just the biggest hurdle to get over is just to put something out there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's perfect, if it's not quite right. I've put out tons of content that I've gone, oh, that was a bit rubbish. But it's out now and it's done. And it's a relief to get it out. So I think that is probably the first step. I think the next step is to have a bit of a plan. So, just start off really easy and really small at first, but at least just go, right, I'm going to post 3 times a week, or I'm going to blog once a month, or an email newsletter, whatever it is in terms of that content that you're creating. Make a plan, know what you're doing, and stick to it. Once you've written it or made that piece of content, schedule it and it's done. And then you don't even have to worry about what's happening, So I think that's a good tip to kind of almost sort of be a bit objective and remove the emotion out of it. It's just you're doing this for your business, therefore you need to put that content and market your business out there. So that's a good way to be consistent in the first place, and then to have a plan that you then stick to for the longer term. It is remembering that no one sees everything. Doing it in a way that brings you joy, because there's no point in writing all these blogs if you really don't enjoy writing, because it's going to come across, and unfortunately that's then going to have an impact on the impression you're leaving with other people about your own brand and your business. So it is a little bit of experimental, I suppose, in the first initial stages of finding what you want to do, can do consistently, and then works for your business as well. So, get a bit creative and try a few different things. There's so many different ways that you can create content and market your business these days. So I think, just to be open to what those options could be. And what about you, Rupa? Have you got any pointers or tips?
Yeah, I was just nodding along because I think they're all really good suggestions. I mean, hands up, I struggle with consistency massively. I think it's really hard to get it right. I think you have to put the little steps in place in order to achieve the big thing. So my kind of, how I kind of deal with consistency, I guess, with my marketing is that those big content plans that you see floating around everywhere, that is my idea of hell. I think they don't fill me with inspiration or excitement. I keep my planning very simple, because sometimes I find that overwhelms and kind of makes me feel a bit run for the hills type of thing. So I keep my content plans quite simple. And similarly to yourself, it's like, okay, 3 posts this week, and they're going to be about X, Y, Z. And I might not even write the post, but I know that I've got to do 3 posts this week. And that is really helpful to just get that in my head. And, I will look at my diary on a Sunday night, so I know kind of what's coming ahead. So again, that is really helpful to make me feel consistent. We talked about repurposing stuff, try and make it easy for yourself. Go back and look at stuff that you've posted maybe 6 months, a year ago. Can you repurpose it? It's funny that you say, you look at stuff and you're like, oh my God, did I write this? Or, it's awful. But often you look at things and go, that was such a brilliant post. I need to, reshape it, reshare it, maybe change the starting bit. But, it's a good way of doing it. I think it's about also, for me, I have like a notes on my phone, which is basically snippets of conversations or ideas, or I get my ideas at the most random times when I go for a run or I'm in the shower. So I try and write these things down in my notes, and then when I have a moment where I'm like, I don't know what to post, which happens a lot, I go in there and I've got something to pick out, and I can kind of use that. The other thing I would say, controversial, sometimes just getting off social media for a while, because I'm hearing all the noise and I'm seeing all this stuff, and 6-figure businesses and hire me and I'll save you from making the biggest mistake of your life and all this crap. Sometimes, I'll be honest, switching off from that and going outside for a walk or doing some kind of movement will help my brain just reset, and I'll come back and I'll be able to write a post or I will write an email or whatever it is I need to focus on. So sometimes taking myself out of that whole buzzy, noisy kind of environment actually is really helpful. And I guess linked to that as well, just don't overthink it. And I think sometimes we get into this, I definitely do, where I'm kind of in this spiral of like, oh my God, this is really terrible. I haven't posted for 3 days and, no one's going to know who I am. And, it's kind of very easy to suddenly kind of get into that kind of mindset of everything is really bad. And when actually the reality is, as we said, not everyone sees everything. Not everyone is going to realize that you haven't posted for 3 days. It's okay if you don't as well. I think we need to be comfortable and okay with that as well. And I think the whole, we're so lucky that we have things like social media, as much as it can have a negative impact and all the rest of it. It's in our hands to kind of decide when we post and when we don't post. So being comfortable with not being online is actually really important, as well as showing up in a different way. So going to a networking event, or, maybe listening to a podcast or doing something just different that takes you out of that kind of bubble of I must post, I must do this, I must, like you said, it's the rules are for us to break and do what's right for us. And I think that's really important. So that's consistency. Obviously, we couldn't do this podcast without talking about confidence. It's probably one of our most talked about topics. So what do you suggest that people can do to help them with confidence when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, so I think one of the things to remember is, as much as we feel weird potentially about promoting and talking about ourselves and our businesses, is that other people are also thinking the same. So they're not focused on you, on what you're saying. Most people, and myself included, are just focused on ourselves, on what we need to do. So no one's really thinking, oh my goodness, what is this person doing? What are they writing that for? It's really not the case. So it's just trying to remember that. The other thing I think is about being authentic. So I think there's a little bit of a, like what I going back to earlier on in the episode, talking about having to big yourself up. Sometimes I think there's a bit of there's an idea that you're supposed to pretend to be something that you're not, someone you're not. But, if people were to meet you in real life, that's still a part of your marketing. You want to make sure that the image is the same. Yes, there might well be a slightly different persona-ish, because we're not going to share everything about ourselves online and in the workspace, but it is key to be authentic, because marketing is built on relationships and people are going to connect with people. And with that, I think, show your personality. that's what's really going to come across. People are going to connect with you because of who you are, not necessarily what you do. And it's about that connection and that relationship that's going to help bring you business and market your business, because people want to know that they can get on with you, or there's an aligned values, or, you know, you've got similar beliefs, or, you know, want the similar goals or outcomes. So people won't know that about you unless you share who you are and show a bit of your personality and what you like. And I think that in turn gives you confidence, because then you're not trying to pretend to be someone or something that you're not, and you're connecting with people from an authentic place. I think also it's important to enjoy what you're selling and know how it can help people. And this comes back to also, I think, being clear on your brand message as well. So when you've got that clarity on what your service is about and how it's helping people, that in turn gives you confidence. And that comes across in your marketing as well. And then with that, I think, you know, it's about not comparing yourself to others. It's really easy to do in the online space and on social media. And, you know, like you said, Rupa, you know, sometimes you need to just take yourself off, because as soon as you start scrolling, you're looking at what all these other people are doing. And you think, oh my God, I haven't done all these amazing things that these other people are doing. And that has a bit of a negative impact on yourself, and then, you know, can hold you back from marketing yourself and promoting your business. But you need to, because otherwise you haven't got a business. So you know, I think it's to take it with a pinch of salt in terms of what other people are doing, and just to find your own space, to find your own niche that is yours, that is uniquely you, is authentic to what you do, how you sell, how you work, the people that you help, you know, what it is that you help, and really just own that space. Because then when you know what that is, you know, you're not worried about what other people around you are doing, because it's not going to have that impact. So yeah, how about you, Rupa? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just again nodding along. I think, a lot of similar things to what I was actually going to say. I think, if you haven't already, do listen to our episode on imposter syndrome, because we talk a lot more about the actual strategies that you can use to help feeling, you know, that horrible feeling of self-doubt. So yeah, definitely recommend listening to that. I think one of the biggest things that has helped me is, you know, that realization that no one is going to market my business for me, apart from obviously, you know, happy clients. They can only do so much though, right? And actually, regardless of whether my business is, you know, 100% referral or not, like, you know, it's that long end game that we are working towards. It's about creating a sustainable business that works for me. Therefore, you know, marketing my business is going to be a massive part of that. And being uncomfortable is, sadly, you know, it is a fact of life. Like doing this podcast, you know, we really didn't have that comfort level at the beginning. And even, I think, even now, you know, there are moments where we will be feeling uncomfortable about putting ourselves out there in a different way. But what's happened and what's changed from maybe a year ago is that we are probably, I know from my perspective, I'm definitely more comfortable with feeling comfortable. I don't feel as so like, oh my God, you know, this is really scary. There'll be moments of that, but I guess I've maybe changed how I handle that fear and that feeling. And actually, you know, even going along to networking events, you know, that fear of, oh, is anyone going to talk to me? Is anyone like showing up on your own? And we're all in the same boat. And I think, you know, what you were saying about previously, if somebody else sees you taking action or doing something, quite often it motivates or spurs them on to do something as well. So not saying that that's the reason why you do those things, but I think sometimes it can be inspiring to see somebody taking courageous and bold action, because, you know, sometimes it makes you want to do similar or, you know, get out of your comfort zone. So I think getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable is really important when it comes to confidence. You spoke about obviously being authentic and kind of being that real you, and, you know, showing up to things and people are like, well, who's this person? They're completely different to their online persona. And I think you do have to share a little bit. You don't have to, you know, we've talked about oversharing, and, you know, you don't have to get into that realm of like every little aspect of your
Yeah.
life. But I think giving a peek into your life is so important, and actually it opens up different conversations and avenues within your audience. The other day I posted, it was such a simple post. It wasn't even a post, it was a story. My kids had just gone back to school and I'd posted a hot cup of coffee, a photo of that, and I just said, something along the lines of, I'm going to enjoy this cup of coffee now the kids are back at school. You wouldn't believe the amount of comments and likes, and people were saying things about how that they'd had a busy half term, and they'd had a moment of peace and calm now their kids have gone to school. Something so simple has created so much engagement, whereas if I post something about my business, I probably wouldn't have got so much engagement. So people are interested in the behind the scenes of your beautifully created Instagram live. So give them a little peek and talk about the frustrations and the challenges if you feel comfortable, because I think that's when people see you as another person. They see the human in you, and let's be honest, that's probably why we follow a lot of people on social media, because we want to know what's happening behind the scenes of their lives. So feeling comfortable with that uncomfortable, but also giving that authentic you and that kind of peek into your life. And then the final point I wanted to make is around nailing what you want to say about yourself, your business, your brand, that whole messaging piece. Because I think when you are really clear about those different things and how you want to talk about your business and the things that you want to communicate, what happens? You become confident because you know your stuff, you know what you want to talk about. And that's when you shine. You don't feel nervous or you don't feel overwhelmed because you don't know what to say. Actually, you've done that work. So I think there is something in there about nailing your messaging, being really prepared so that you can show up and feel confident. You don't have to worry about what you're going to say, because guess what? You've already got those key messages, and you know what, you know where this conversation is going to go. Okay, so what are the best low-cost, effective marketing strategies for creative small businesses? What would you say they are, Vardeep?
So I think there's two things primarily, and both are focused on building relationships through social media and networking. People need to know who you are. So you can write blogs and create content, video content for YouTube and etc. And that is good for SEO, and that's a longer term game in terms of people potentially finding you and searching you online. But people are going to buy from people. So I think especially in the beginning, low cost ways, social media, there is tons of potential there in terms of building relationships, finding groups, finding events as well online, and networking, in person as well, offline events. I think they are two key things for creative and small businesses. What are your tips, Reaper?
Yeah, I think they're really good points, and I think you can do both really quite cheaply. The one that I was going to suggest is actually email marketing. So I don't think, I think there are ones that you can get for free. Obviously, you can pay for like a subscription service. I mean, you would have to kind of research and see what's out there, but I think it's a really good way of just showing up in your audience's inboxes, and you can be, it depends on how comfortable you are, obviously, but I feel like that is a really nice way of nurturing a community. And if you don't want the kind of noisy social media aspect, this is maybe somewhere that you can kind of nurture that audience. You can share information about your business, but also talk about those other things that we were talking about previously. And for me, I think it's something that, again, it takes work, it takes time, it takes commitment. But I think once you get consistent with it, again, you will start to see results, because you're talking to that same group of people. Hopefully it's growing as well, that audience, week in, week out, or however regularly you do it. But it's a really good way of kind of setting that drumbeat of regular communication. And that's what we want, isn't it, really? So yeah, my advice would be to look into email marketing and see if that's a potential option.
Okay, so we always like to try and share examples of people who are doing really well in the topics in our own episodes. And so we want to talk about some examples of creative business founders who have nailed their marketing strategy or are doing well in terms of their own marketing and putting themselves out there. Rupert, do you have anyone that you would mention?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of women, I would say. But one that kind of instantly sprung to mind was one of our guests from series 1. So Anita Poppert, who we interviewed. She's a social media coach and she works with clients who might be introverts, a bit like ourselves. And she helps them show up on Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, I really like the way that she markets her business. She's really thought about who her clients are. And I think the way that she shows up online, she talks about some of the challenges that she faces as an introvert, what that actually looks like in her business as well as when she shows up online. I think it's helpful because it aligns her to her target audience quite nicely. And she doesn't really change or adapt her marketing to kind of suit everybody. She's very much kind of focused on that target audience. So she isn't for everyone and she's okay with that. And I really like that. And I think, some of the things that she talks about, like the way that she, the books that she recommends and, some of the things that she does, she talks about networking, for example, and how she will go to events and she will talk to people in the room, but it will then take her a few days to kind of manage her energy. And I really like that because I actually feel very similar. I can do the talking, I can go to the networking events, and it's taken me a while to feel comfortable, talking about my business and, navigating, I guess, new spaces. But then when I've kind of done that talking and, being quite social, a few days after that, I won't want to, speak to anybody or do anything. So it's managing that energy. And I really like that she kind of brings that authentic content to her marketing. What about you? Who do you recommend?
Yeah, it's a great example, I think, especially for introverts, and it just makes you feel seen, doesn't it, and heard? Because I'm very much like that as well. I have no problem going to events and talking to people and being sociable, but then I need the balance. So I need to make sure that it's not always full on and that I get the time out afterwards. My example was going to be Rachel Rogers. So she spoke at Atomicon last year, I think, and she is American. She's not technically a marketing person, but I think she markets herself very well. She's got a great story. So she talks about her story and her upbringing, where she's come from, the challenges that she's faced as a Black woman working as a lawyer, initially, and being overlooked for promotion and, and the kind of the challenges that she's come across with clients in her experience as well. So I feel like she's had to break quite a few barriers to get to where she is, which has the impact on her, how she shows up, I think, for her business then as well. So she's very, very confident, but she wants to give her audience a voice. And I really like that element of her marketing and how she approaches that. So she's very mission led, I suppose, is what I like about her marketing. I can really see that and I can come on board with it because of that story and how she puts herself out there.
I need to look out for her because I haven't heard of her before, so I will definitely search her out. So we're coming up to kind of the wrap up of this conversation, but before we go, we wanted to share any kind of books or resources, people that we'd recommend. Is there anybody or anything that you wanted to recommend, Vadi?
Well, interestingly, I found it really hard to find marketing resources written or sourced by women of color. And, and I'm using this from going through my own library of books, as well as, my Amazon wish list and just Amazon in general, and also the people that I know of within my network. So it was really hard to find somebody as a woman of color, which is interesting. And there's obviously a gap there. But I was just going to revert back to Rachel Rogers because she has got a book. And although it's not technically marketing, it is about giving you that confidence of putting yourself out there and kind of going for it, which I think is what you need to be able to market and promote your business. The other couple of books, which aren't from women of colour, but I still think are valid for marketing, is Story Brand by Donald Miller and One Page Marketing Plan, which I think is Alan Dibb. Both are really good examples of, just making marketing really simple and bringing the storytelling element to it as well, and having a bit of structure to your marketing plan. How about you, Rupa? Have you got any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, I struggled as well. I think, there probably are books and resources and people out there. I think, it's maybe about us working that bit harder and finding them. However, it's really stark, isn't it? When you look and you think, oh my God, actually, there isn't that many. I mean, one of our future guests who will be appearing on this podcast is Sherelle Griffith, and she is brilliant. She's a marketer, and I don't think she's got a book out yet, but maybe that might be something coming in the future. Do seek her out on LinkedIn though, because she does these lives. I mean, she's committed to doing a live, I think, once every week, which is incredible. Wow. I mean, we did it for four weeks, which was quite full on. Yeah. And actually, we did actually notice quite a high engagement on our LinkedIn kind of after those lives as well. So maybe that's something to consider from a marketing perspective. But Sherelle gives some brilliant insights and tips into marketing. So definitely somebody to kind of look at and follow. We've obviously also spoken to lovely Ella Orr. We spoke to her on our Instagram live a few months ago. Ella's brilliant. She is a social media manager and coach, and she focuses a lot on personal brands. So do kind of look out for her on Instagram as well. I think she's a great person to follow. And then the final person, whilst not a woman of colour, I really like her method of making marketing quite simple. So it's Hannah Eisted. I think that's how you say her name. She's written a book called The Best 90 Days. Basically, it's like 10-minute tasks. Some are actually a bit longer than that, but it's 10-minute daily tasks to get your marketing started. And she does like basically a sprint of 3 months, 90 days, hence the name of the book. And basically, it helps you get your house in order in terms of your marketing. So definitely would recommend looking at that. Obviously, Enterprise Nation as well. There's so many resources on there. Definitely worth a look and seeing kind of what else is out there. Right. So last question. What is your top tip, kind of, biggest tip for effective marketing?
So I think it's getting clarity on what your customer's problem is and how your service is a solution to that. How about you?
Great.
So short and sweet.
Great. And actually mine's quite aligned to that. I would probably go one step maybe before that and say, speak to your target audience. So try and do some market research, because speaking to your clients is the best way to kind of understand, where they hang out, how they want to interact with you, what are those pain points and, challenges that they're facing, and then how can they use your service or products as a solution. So definitely talk to your audience. I think, market research is something that, a lot of people think, it's really difficult. I really want to speak to my clients. Well, is there another way that you can do that? Maybe you can put like a sticker on Instagram and ask people to interact with you that way. Or can you maybe do some targeted email or LinkedIn posts or DMs or anything like that? Get creative and kind of think about, different ways that you could potentially do that. So that's it. I think we're done for this episode. We hope that we have given you lots of ideas, tips and inspiration. Hopefully you're feeling a bit more excited, inspired about marketing your business. Let us know, because we really want to hear from you. Come and find us on LinkedIn and Instagram, and we will see you again in a fortnight with another very exciting guest. See you later.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. The Courageous Collective is created by Rupa Baradva and Vardeep Edwards. We really appreciate your feedback, so please like, share and follow us. Please also subscribe to receive an alert for our next episode.
You can find out where to follow us on social media in the show notes, and if you'd like to be a future guest, please do get in touch. Thanks, and see you soon.